Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, my group and I are going to present about universal grammar. Okay, now I'm going to show you the subtopic for our presentation, which is starting from definition, history, surface structure, deep structure, example and evidence, and lastly, problem and the issue of universal grammar. Okay, I hope everyone is ready, and we're going to start our presentation now.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nick Muhammad Al-Latif bin Nick Azlim 18BE01048, and for my part, I will explain about the definitions of universal grammar. So what is universal grammar? There are few definitions for universal grammar, but all the definition is relatable to Noam Chomsky. For the first one, as Chomsky, he has observed that universal grammar is not a grammar, but rather a theory of grammars, a meta-theory or schematisms for grammar. It is from Noam Chomsky, Language and Responsibility, 1979. Okay, so the second definition is universal grammar as the systems or principles or conditions or rule that are elements or properties for all human languages, not by accidents but by necessities. This is from Noam Chomsky Reflections on Language, Pentium 1975. For the third definition is universal grammar is usually defined as the system of category, mechanism, and constraints of all human languages and considered to be innate. This is from uh, O'Grady et al. 1996, Chomsky 1986, and Pesarsky 1999. The last definition is the universal grammar is the set of properties, conditions, or whatever the constitute of the initial state of the language learner. Hence, the basis on which knowledge of a language develops. It by no means follow from such an account that there must be a specific elements or rules or features common to all languages, unless we take these features in suitably abstract manner. This is from Noam Chomsky, Rules and Representations, Columbia University Press, 1980. Okay, so we move on to the hypothesis of universal grammar. The first one is universal grammar is a theory that suggests that some rule of grammar are already hardwired into the brain and will manifest without being taught. The second hypothesis is the idea that human languages, as superficially diverse as they are, share some fundamental similarities and that these are attributable to innate principle unique to languages. That deep down, there is only one human language. Chomsky 2000. So that's all from my part. I will pass for the next presenter. Thank you so much.
Okay, hi guys. Today I will be explaining the theory of universal grammar. This is a theory made by Noam Chomsky. Okay, let's look at my first point. Noam Chomsky introduced the universal grammar in 1950s. Basically, this is the 1950s period. And let just ask ourselves: is there a theory before this? A very prominent theory? Yes or no? The answer is yes. There was a theory called behaviorism. Okay, let's look at my second point, which is before Chomsky's theory, people used the behaviorism theory in 1900 to interpret language for children. So basically here, the behaviorism, as we know, that they said that children, I was going to say student, but children get everything from their parents by imitating, by trial and error, try error, and basically they get success by imitating. No, that what Noam Chomsky said, and he made a book. Let's look at my third point. What book? The book of syntactic structures. In the book Syntactic Structure, he made his non-empiricist theory of language. Basically, he said he wanted change in the language world. So, at first, he criticized the work of Skinner, if I'm not mistaken. Skinner is a person in behaviorism. He made the verbal theory, if I'm not mistaken. For the verbal theory, basically the theory is just like I said in the second point. He said something like trial error and then success imitate. No. your theory is wrong. There is another theory. Okay, let's just see what did Chomsky said in his book, The Syntactic Structures. Okay, let's look at my fourth point. In my fourth point, the theory tells that a person genetically, not immediately, have the knowledge about linguistics. Basically, they have it in them. Even when a child, even basically when they are a little child, and can determine how strong the words are organized when they hear their surrounding. Basically, they have it in them, but they need to organize the words. Okay, this is my fifth point. Let me just read it. This is because every sentence that anyone produce can be a totally new combination of words. Basically, kids have that. The children, I mean. Let's just say they said, run is I. This is not the right word. The right word is I is running. I am running. So, basically, they know the words. If you put them in every corner of the world, so basically they know the word. They just need to rearrange it. Okay, this is all about universal grammar. Okay, let's look a bit about Chomsky. Who is Chomsky right now? Chomsky is the father of modern linguistics, my sixth point. And basically, he is still alive. So, we are, let's just say many linguistics in Malaysia are using his theory right now to explain like second language acquisition and also for syntax. Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Firdaus bin Razi. My metric number is 19BE0056. So my part is for the deep structure, but I'm going to generally explain about the deep and the surface structure. So according to Chomsky theory, deep and surface structure is a set of transpositional rules involving the addition, deletion, and rearrangement of sentences and pieces that build the surface structure of sentence from the deep structure. In short, deep structure determines meaning and surface structures determine sounds. Or more, actually, there are going to be more explanation after this. So basically, the deep and the surface structure is that the build up of sentences. From the deep and the surface structure, there's going to be deletion, rearrangement of a sentence, and more. And then, right, the next one I'm going to explain about first is the deep structure. So this refers to the concept of thoughts, idea, and feelings. Thoughts. It concerns with meaning, what we wish to express. Structure is the abstract structure which allow to know what sentences mean. It means that deep structure is actually what from us ourselves before we write what we want to write in grammar or writing. It says that the deep structure it refers to our thoughts, our idea or our feelings before we write. And then the deep structure also concerns with meaning. Let's say if I want to write something, it concerns the meaning of what I'm going to write, what that I just wrote or things like that. And then what we wish to express. Deep structure, it concerns on what we wish to express from ourselves to our writing. And then structure is an abstract structure which allow to know what the sentence means. It means that, like I said just now, when I write something, the deep structure is going to explain what is actually I'm trying to convey. Alright, and then the next one is, as you see and in this picture, the deep structure is from our brain, which is from inside of us, from our brains, our feelings, our thoughts. And the surface structure is when we actually give it out, the outcome of our deep structure, which is what we think in our brain and stuff. So from deep structure, we convey it into writings or typings and things like that, and then we actually convey what we want to say, and then we write it or thing, etc. Okay, so the example of deep structure is, for example, for this one is I bought colorful clothes. As for the deep structure, when I said that I bought colorful clothes, is that they are actually the not categories. They are actually more on what I'm trying to convey. because when I said that I bought colorful clothes, it doesn't it will split into many kind of questions in from the deep structure. It means that macam, let's say if I say I bought colorful clothes, that's actually the questions like how many clothes did I bought. I just said that I just bought colorful clothes, which is plural, which is more than two, but how many actually? So what type of clothes did I just bought? There are many questions from our deep structure from ourselves, from what we say, what we thought, what we think, and then we actually convey it. They are going to have many kinds of questions and stuff. And then then I'm done. Alright, that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Amir Faira bin Ahmad Fuad and my metric number is 19BE01062. Okay, so right now I'm going to explain a little bit about the surface structure. Okay, so the first one is surface structure refers to the words or language we use to represent the deep structure. Surface structure is a form of language that is based on deep structure. It also concerned with grammar and how you are going to express it. And the last one is it can represent two different deep structure. Okay, so based on my understanding for the surface structure, I think it is related to the deep structure. As you can see here, surface structure is served as the basis for phonological interpretation. And the surface structure is a form of language that is based on deep structure, and it is an actual form of a sentence that is modified or transformed based on the deep structure. So in short, deep structure determines meaning and surface structure determines sound. Okay, don't worry if you don't understand, I will show you an example of the surface structure. Okay, the example of surface structure. Alright, so this is the example of the surface structure. Alright, the first example is the dog chased the cat. So the surface structure will be the cat was chased by the dog. And the second surface structure is focus on what is signified. So the surface structure will be focus is on the sign. Okay, I will give you another example. Alright, the sentence will be Charlie broke the window. Okay, this sentence is actually a deep structure. Okay, from this sentence we can make it become two different sentences, which is the surface structure. Okay, the first surface structure is the window was broken by Charlie, and the second one is Charlie who broke the window. So you understand? So I think that's all for the explanation on the surface structure from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mio Shafiq bin Mio Sharif, and my metric number is 18BE01034. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about the example and evidence of universal grammar. Okay, alright, the first one is the evidence. According to Chomsky, there are fixed invariant principle which is simply part of human biological endowment and determine what is human language. What does Chomsky mean by this is that every human, when we were born to this world, we actually has an innate ability where we can determine human language. Okay, let's move on. In syntax, a grammar must contain a finite system of rules that generate infinitely many deep and surface structures. Okay, now let's take a look at the next point. Okay, it must also contain rules that relate these abstract structures to certain representations of sound and meaning that are constituted of elements that belong to universal phonetic and universal semantic. Okay, this can be explained that a universal grammar shows that every language has the same characteristic, which is the existence of uh, noun and verb, way to ask questions, and way to differentiate between just one or more than one things. Uh, what does this mean is that in every language in this world, it, it, it always contains the same characteristic like any other language. For example, there can be like we have the words that can differentiate just one or more things, such as um, in English, car or cars. There are also some and many. In bahasa Melayu, we have like sedikit, banyak. Pretty much every other language has it. And there also way to ask question or way that you might understand the questions. For example, like, huh? That's like you want them to explain back because you don't quite understand what they are saying, or oh, which mean that you understand it. Okay. Now let's take a look at the examples of universal grammar. Universal grammar consists of no more than two branches spring from the same notes, such as subject verb phrases. Okay, which mean that it is a simple phrases like most kids do all the time. Okay, now let's take a look. A verb that contains argument structure. For example, like John sleep, subject and verb. John sleeps, or a bit more information than that. John eats burger, or John eats burger at McDonald's. It's start very simple, like John sleeps. And then next we have meaning depends on order, like John is hungry, or is John hungry. When we rearrange the words, it became a different meaning. Okay, that is all for the example and evidence of universal grammar. Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Raya binti Mukhtar and my metric number is 18 BE01032. Okay, next we move on to the problem and the issues of universal grammar with multiple languages. So, as we know, Chomsky suggested the theory of language acquisition in children incentively to universal grammar that represent a universal grammar for human language. But there are some issues. Let's check out the issues one by one. Alright, for the first issues is the theory has encountered criticism from a lot of linguists such as Jean Piaget, Jeffrey Sampson, Ray Daniel Everett, and the others. It is found that Chomsky did not take samples from several languages. When Chomsky proposed the universal grammar and child language acquisition theory, he did not study the languages, but he taught this language only at the level of nature of the English language. Okay, the last problem or issues, language based on knowledge and skill, just like other science and skills. Okay, this point is very interesting. We all know that science and skill are learned and required through practice, education, and application. Am I right? Of course I'm right. So, if all people acquire languages innately and learn everything, but instead based on theory of Chomsky, it must be a sign level of knowledge among of human beings are equal, right? But why there are some people out there are bad on science, art, music? Just think. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.